to join world class manufacturer. That's my dream, that's my vision. But way back about 6 decades ago, when Pakistan was becoming democratic country in a way, because before that it was, whatever, no politics here. So at that time there was a socialism in 1976, and Drug Act was formed, written. And in that Drug Act, because there was a socialism concept of social controls, everything control, Section 12 was introduced, which says that every tablet, every capsule, every drop of eye drop, and every injection, their price will be fixed by the federal government. Most of you know what does it mean. It's the entire cabinet of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan which decide the price of each and every product. And now, when world is moving towards free economy, less market forces should fix the prices, and we are controlling them. And now, inflation, appreciation of dollar or foreign currencies is making us very difficult to even ensure availability of medicine, what to talk of standardization. That's the dilemma the industry is facing at this point in time. But yes, we want to ensure that our population deserves the best quality medicine. I, as a patient, diabetic patient, and a hypertension, and I don't know what, because I'm now like a, I take medicine from my own manufacturing company. Then I am ensured that I have a trust that my brothers and sisters in the market have confidence on a Pakistani medicine. At the end, thank you very much. All of you sparing time. Pakistan Pharmaceutical Manufacturers Association always tries that our technical staff must know what is good to do in the industry. Once again, I thank you all, sir, Waqas Saab, Mr. Robert, Sultan Ghani Saab, बहुत शुक्रिया. मैं सुल्तान गनी साहब को उर्दू में बात करूँगा, पीरे मोगा कहता हूँ. इनकी ज़ात मैं हमेशा अल्लाह ताला से दुआ करता हूँ कि ये कोई 1000-2000 साल तो उम्र खिज़रे पाएँ, जिस तरह ये हमारी इंडस्ट्री की मदद कर रहे हैं. और हमेशा जो कोई भी इनसे फ़ोन करे, बात करे, ही इज़ ऑलवेज अवेलेबल नॉलेज देने के लिए. और अल्लाह ताला का शुक्र है कि भाई पाकिस्तान में जिस तरह का अब इंडस्ट्री सोच रही है, और उसमें सुल्तान गनी साहब जिस तरह, चाहे वो यूएसपी के प्लेटफॉर्म पे हो, चाहे वो WHO के प्लेटफॉर्म पे हो, या इन हिज ओन इंडिविजुअल कैपेसिटी, जिस तरह ये और इनकी टीम यहाँ रीमा भी बैठी है, जिस तरह ये मदद कर रहे हैं. Thank you, sir, Sultan Saab. Thank you very much. And thank you all. Thank you, Waqas Saab. Professor Saeed Quraishi Saab, thank you very much. And Mr. Robert, thank you very much.
Thank you, Kaisar Saab. I'd like to invite Chairman PPMA South, Nadir Khan Saab, to share his opening remarks, please.
Assalamu alaikum. A very good morning to all ladies and gentlemen. My name is Nadir Khan, and I'm the Chairman PPMA South Zone, and also the CEO of Magitech Pharma Private Limited. First of all, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your warm participation. All the technical peoples from different companies. I would like to pay thanks to our guest of honor, Dr. Saeed Hani, for his valuable participation and giving us a precious time today for the presentation. And I would also pay thanks to our USP team, Mr. Robert Wayne, Mr. Waqas, and Saeed Ghani Saab. our target today is mainly to cope up with the PICS. Most of the companies we are not qualified for the PICS, not working for the PICS qualification. So this is a great opportunity for us. We have a very good trainer. We have a very good team of USP here, which guide us or our technical team about the how to implement the PICS qualification, and which goes a route to enter into the international market. So thank you very much, all of you, and our chief guest, and all the speakers from the USP. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nader Saab. I'd like to invite our consultant, expert, global expert in PICS, Mr. Robert Tribe, to say a few words. He specifically asked me not to introduce himself, so not to introduce him. So I'll just invite him to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. I thought I should introduce myself and tell you a bit of background to what I have done over my life. I've worked previously in the pharmaceutical industry in a quality assurance position in a company in New Zealand. I was the quality assurance manager for that company. When I left that company, I joined the TGA Australia, and I became a GMP inspector, eventually becoming head of GMP for TGA, and I held that position for 23 years. While I was at TGA, I became chairman of PICS in the years 2000 and 2001, which is a very interesting experience, very hard working, but I enjoyed it very much. When I retired from TGA in 2004, I became a consultant to regulatory authorities, to GMP regulatory authorities all around the world. And so far, I have assisted at least 15 GMP inspectorates to get their PICS membership. And that includes South Africa, Korea, Japan, Turkey, Iran, Israel, Taiwan, and Ukraine, and others as well. I'm currently helping the GMP regulators from Jordan, Philippines, Saudi Arabia, China, Russia, and of course your country. No doubt it'll be a long time before I get to Russia again, but I've already been there once, and they still have a long way to go themselves. I'll give you more information about different countries and their situation when I give my presentation shortly. Thank you.
Sorry. I'd like to request Sultan Ghani Saab to also share some opening remarks before we start the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. सबसे पहले तो मैं आप लोगों को इस बात की अश्योरेंस देता हूँ कि आप इंडस्ट्री बिल्कुल कुछ परेशान ना हो पिक की वजह से. There has been lot of concern, and for that reason I suggested Vikas that we should have an kind of an orientation session with the help of the PPMA, and thank you very much, Qaisar Wahi Saab. He always support us. We want to get this fear out there has been a lot of concern by some of the CEOs and the manufacturers that introducing PIC will be a new game in the GMP inspection, and they are very much concerned that there will be hassling too much with the regulatory authorities on these issues, such as the CAPA and all kinds of things, and it will take a lot of their time and resources and cost, all that. So for that reason, we decided that we will tell you exactly, and I'm sure at the end of the session you will be fully convinced that the PIC is just nothing. It's just nothing. जिस तरह सारे इंस्पेक्शन होते हैं और मेरा जितना एक्सपीरियंस है इस GMP के ऊपर with the Health Canada, US FDA, Europe, many mutual recognition agreements based on the compliance that we have between Europe and Health Canada, all that, there is no difference. Then the problem was that in Pakistan we have no systematic, proper inspection process. And if you either accept this process, take it from MHRA, take it from US FDA, take it from Health Canada, there's no difference. GMP is GMP. 10 times I told you that there is no real difference between the good manufacturing practice of US FDA, Health Canada, WHO, they are all same. Except minor details are there. So just leave it minor details, and it has so many advantages to you as an industry. Even you do not wish to export your product. Even with the local manufacturing, keeping the better quality systems, and you will hear with Bob. And I know Bob for many, many years. We worked together in different conferences and different meetings. And when USP was considering to have a consultant from abroad, I suggested Bob's name is the best. I know there are a couple of well-known GMP compliance gurus, and one of them is the Bob. And you will hear it. We don't want to waste our time to tell. I'm always available here. But today, he will tell you what benefit, real one is, that industry will get it from that. Forget about trap and all that. Just forget it. But I think that is what it is. So today we will be talking. We wish that you ask all kinds of questions, prepare your questions, clarify it. Pick कोई हुआ नहीं है, ये मैं आपको बता दूं. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sultan Saab. I request you to wait just 2 minutes because we're just having some technical problems. We've got Asim Saab here to address the forum, but I think we're just having a couple of audio difficulties. Is that on? Can you? Okay, perfect. Okay, Asim Saab, over to you, sir, for some opening remarks for this gracious event. Thank you for joining us today. जी आसिम साहब, we can hear you. जी आसिम साहब, we can hear you. Thank you so much, Asim Saab, for joining us all the way from Lahore. I think it shows the commitment of the regulator also to work collaboratively with the industry as we together try to evolve. I'd like to invite Professor Dr. Saeed Qureshi Saab to please share his opening remarks for this session.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. In the first place, I would like to welcome Bob Tribe here to Pakistan. He tells me that this is his first visit. He has been to Islamabad and now to Karachi. And I hope that he will be able to inform us and we will be able to learn from him what is PICS and what is to be done in Pakistan. US Pharmacopoeia has been helping a number of institutions, and we have also been associated with them for some time now, and now it is going to be much closer and increasing cooperation. So I hope this meeting is going to be a learning experience for everybody, and we will be able to start off PICS in Pakistan. Thank you very much.
Okay. Before we proceed to the presentations, sorry, just a second. Before we proceed to the presentations, I'd like to request Kaisar Saab and to start to present some mementos to the other guests gracing the head table. Yeah.
May I request Professor Saeed Qureshi Saab, please come in front so that photography can be done. May I request Mr. Robert to receive memento, please, on our behalf. Nadir, आगे आ जाइए, इधर यहाँ पे नीचे चला नीचे आ जाइए, नादिर आगे आज बखा साहब सुल्तान साहब आगे बखा साहब
So we'll have tea now before we get down to business. And we'll have an opportunity to take a group photograph on the stairs as you come up, where I think everyone can be accommodated. So if you'd like to join us for tea outside, we'll take about 15 minutes. Let's try and keep it to 15 minutes, and then hopefully we can get down to some presentations on this. Thank you.
एक छोटा सा रिमाइंडर देना था, जो पार्टिसिपेंट हैं उन्होंने अपनी ईमेल और अगर कांटेक्ट डिटेल अगर दे दें तो सर्टिफिकेट हम बाय मेल या बाय डिजिटल तरीके से हम आपको सर्टिफिकेशन आज का पार्टिसिपेशन सर्टिफिकेट भेज देंगे.
Is this working? Yeah. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for being on time. Now we get down to business. So I'd like to invite Sultan Ghani Saab to share his presentation on the introduction for PICS. Sultan Ghani Saab, please.
Thank you very much. And before I start it, as I said it to you, that as an industry, I think you will appreciate it very much once DRAP achieves the PIC membership. I have some experience because when Canada was not the member of PICS, and historically PIC was started by few countries, kind of I should say a club of few regulators getting together and started talking about and sharing the information in the evening mostly. And then gradually the number increases and officially it becomes a organization. It used to be PIC. It was a kind of a convention, but later on, after the European Union unification, this has been changed and it becomes kind of a PIC, you know. So, I'm sorry. And slowly the country started realizing that this is a very good organization, and they started joining it. And many experts, I should say, are the part of this organization. And for years, US FDA was not interested. It's kind of more a European organization. And TGA joined, and then Health Canada, when I was the compliance officer there, I requested Health Canada to join the PICS, and then we joined as a member of PICS. And slowly, people are finding there are more advantages, very clear and very simplified guidelines have been produced on different areas, and you are going to hear much more detail of the PIC from Bob. And then as it grows now, you know, they are almost, I think, over 55 or something is the number, and there are many potential candidates that are still in the process of joining it, and so does the DRAP. I'm sure once the DRAP started working not only to pick but also on GBT, which actually USP PQM Plus is assisting. I think it's a great advantage to pharma industry in Pakistan. Forget about all other things that are associated with the DRAP and the difficulties that we are facing. But कभी सुबह होगी और जब सुबह होगी तो यकीनी DRAP ऐसी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन हो जाएगी जिससे जो कि इंडस्ट्री को बहुत ज़्यादा बेनिफिट दे. अभी तो इंडस्ट्री के लिए एक sore point है, and I agree with that. So my presentation is very brief. I have few slides. The background, as I said it, that here's the background, and it's not very clear, so unfortunately, so I will not going to read it, but this is basically the background. You can read it about the PIC. Actually, the other thing I want to emphasize here, that you are here not to hear me. You have heard me many times. I'm always here. I think the key objective of USP and also the PPMA is to have and hear Bob Tribe. And I think that's, we all should focus on his presentation. The fear that I like it, that you should not worry, is, I'll go skip on this, the benefits, and you can see the benefits are there. I can tell you there are lots of benefits. I experienced it with Health Canada when we joined it. And I think that we should not worry about that. It takes time, to get the membership. It's not just you pay the fee and get the membership. That is not the situation. So I think the situation is that what benefits you get as an organization. One thing, that the country regulatory authority will join and share the most important information through these meeting sessions, developing guidelines, all that. That is the key, one thing. The second thing is that your standards, your company's standards will improve. I mean, if you look at the members, it's not that you should worry that if DRAP will come and it's a small company, your system and the process should be fine. Kathar Vaisa mentioned about that we have 50 years old. Well, there are 100 years old companies situated in United States and Canada. Pfizer itself, plant in Montreal, is the oldest plant. So that doesn't matter, as long as their systems, the processes are fine. Don't worry about the buildings and all that. You have to focus on the key issue. And the key issue is the cross-contamination. And that's most important here. So I think you should not worry that when the PIC will come, at least the inspector team will come. They will work with you, or in the beginning there will be definitely issues because they will try to impose the stringent guidelines to you, but slowly they have to understand, sure, there should be a transition period and all that. And we are suggesting that once we train the inspectors, I think we would like also to have more meetings and workshop with industry. And I'm suggesting that definitely PQM Plus will definitely help it. So there are tremendous advantages for you, for your export. People realize it. Like for Health Canada, they don't have sufficient inspectors to go and do inspection abroad. So they recognize it. There is no legal binding of mutual agreements between PIC and the regulatory authority. It's up to them. But at least if it's a PIC, I know if you are a PIC member, I'm sure Health Canada will not come to do the inspection. If it has been inspected by the PIC and you are fully compliant. In many situations is like that. Resources are not there. So they focus where the issue is on the risk. And you all should try to understand the risk-based inspections, because the companies that are already existed and have their own compliance and the history of compliance, then you can apply the risk-based inspection. You cannot apply risk-based inspection on a brand new company. Cannot. Because you read the guidelines and you will see how the calculation of the risk is done. And that determines what should be the frequency of your inspection. If you are very good, the frequency of DRAP not coming every 5 months, 6 months they used to do is no longer. So you should not worry at all. So these are the many advantages of the PIC. I won't go through my presentation. It's not properly done, but anyway, I'll try to sum it up, and I'll definitely, Vikas and I discussed, we develop more cooperation with PPMA and even Pharma Bureau, and have a small workshop free of cost to industry, educated whatever we know. We invite people from the other region of the where PPQM is working and developing courses. So that this is the very important thing, a good contribution PQM Plus is doing it. I mean, people are not recognizing what they have done during the COVID time. And so I think I should stop here, and I like to again thanks Bob. He's coming and he'll give you a very good three presentation. I heard all three, and you will definitely enjoy, learn a lot on that one. So just work it in your organization to honestly keeping your data properly, maintain the integrity of the data. That is the most important thing, and have your process very clear. There's no rocket science. It's very simple. And there is no major expense involved in this, very investment involved with that. So with that, I thank you, all of you, and pass the die to the, I think, to our MC. Thank you.
Mr. Robert Tribe, I'd like to invite you to the stage to please share your first presentation. We'll have a round of Q&A after the presentation, so everyone will have an opportunity to ask questions. Thank you.
And where's the presentation?
This is a forward and this is a back. Your presentation is here on my screen.
Thank you, and good morning once again. In this presentation, I'm going to be talking about the main features of PICS, the members, the applicants, and the pre-applicants. Could I just ask the technical people, it's not coming up on the screen here. I think we're okay now. I'm going to talk about the benefits of PICS membership, not only for the industry, but also for the inspectorate, and also the PICS accession procedure. I'm going to tell you what your regulatory agency is going through at the moment, and give you some additional background on PICS and some recent news. So the main features of PICS, it started operating in 1995, but it goes back even further, back to 1971, when it was previously known as the Pharmaceutical Inspection Convention. And you'll notice on the board here, they've used the word convention. It should really be cooperation. And in those days, back in 1971, there were only 10 countries. And it's really expanded a lot now to 54 regulatory authorities all around the world. This is an important point to remember. PICS is an informal cooperative arrangement between regulatory authorities. It's not a legal treaty. So PICS is between regulatory authorities, whereas an MRA is between countries. It's not between countries, it's between regulatory authorities. It's a forum for networking, confidence building, exchanging information on GMP, exchanging inspection reports, focusing very much on quality systems for inspectorates, which I'll talk about a bit more shortly. A lot of emphasis on the training of inspectors and international harmonisation on GMP. There is no obligation for a member authority to accept an inspection report of other members, but PICS is working towards what they call an inspection reliance, where PICS members rely on the inspection reports of other members. And there's a great deal of emphasis on this new approach within PICS right now. PICS, they hold meetings and seminars, and these are not open to the industry. It's just inspectors and people from the member agencies. This is a photo of the PICS 40th anniversary symposium in Geneva in 2011. These are all the delegates. I'm somewhere in that photo. I attended that myself. And then on the 4th of October this year, they will be holding their 50th anniversary of PICS in Dublin in Ireland. And I will be attending that symposium as a former PICS chair. This is a photograph of Dr. Margaret Hamburg from the US FDA on the left, and Mr. Tor Graberg he was at that time the PICS chairman. And this was Dr. Hamburg was giving a keynote address at the 40th anniversary symposium of PICS. But one of the statements that she made in her address really sums up what PICS is all about. She says that PICS's main advantage over mutual recognition is that it is not legally binding, thus allowing participating authorities to cooperate and share information informally while still keeping complete control over imported medicinal products. It's a very nice summary about what PICS really is. These are the current 54 members of PICS, with Anvisa Brazil being the newest member. They joined in January last year. And of course, with the pandemic, there's been no more members because PICS simply can't get out there and do their assessments. But now they are starting again, and they will be assessing various applicants very shortly. These are the current candidates for PICS membership. And on the left-hand side, these are the applicants: Armenia, Bulgaria, Russia, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia. I've been the consultant for Russia, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia, and I understand that Saudi Arabia will get their membership in October this year at the PICS committee meeting being held in Dublin. The pre-applicants in the middle: Azerbaijan, China, and yourself, Pakistan, DRAB. And DRAB is really a former pre-applicant because DRAB had already made a pre-application some time ago. They went through that process, and now they're at the stage where they have to decide when to lodge a full application. And we'll be discussing that next week in Islamabad. On the right-hand side, you can see India, Bangladesh, the regulatory authorities of India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Vietnam, and Philippines. I would have to say that India is quite a long way behind where you are here in Pakistan. The main problem in India is that they have so many different provincial inspectorates. It's just so hard to achieve consistency and uniformity across the whole country. You have a big advantage here in Pakistan. You've got one agency, one central inspectorate. It's making it a lot easier to achieve consistent and uniform approach to inspections. Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, I'm not exactly sure where they are at the moment, but I understand they have quite a long way to go in comparison to where you are. So it would be nice to see DRAP become a member before India, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. I know there's a lot of rivalry between all these countries, so I hope you get there. I'm also the consultant to China, to Vietnam, and the Philippines. And I'm actually visiting the Philippines probably in several months. That's a very interesting history they had. The Philippines made an application a long time ago, and then they dropped their application because they had a new boss in the Philippines agency who said, "Oh, this is too much, this is too hard, it's too costly, let's forget it." Just last year they had a new boss of the Philippines agency, and he could see the benefits. So they've reactivated their application and they're going forward, and that's the reason for my visit in a few, maybe a couple of months. The pre-accession process, it really enables a regulator to determine whether they are ready to make a full application. They have to sit down and do their own gap analysis. And DRAP has been through that process. They have identified their gaps and their weaknesses, and this is the reason I'm here in Pakistan, is to help address those gaps. And so far, they're doing a good job in doing that. How does it operate? Well, it has a PICS committee, and this committee comprises mainly the heads of GMP of each member agency. It has the executive bureau comprising a chairman, a deputy chairman, and 6 members from the member authorities. It has 7 subcommittees covering these particular topics. I won't go into any detail on that. It has a 3-person secretariat based in Geneva. It operates to a fairly small budget. So the annual membership fee is 8,500 Swiss francs per year. And this money is really just to pay for the operation of the secretariat in Geneva. It has very good relationships and collaboration. It's very much like a family atmosphere once they have their meetings, their seminars. Very good training opportunities for member inspectors. They have seminars, joint visits, expert circles. I'll have more to say about this shortly. A lot of exchange of information, particularly GMP inspection reports, rapid alerts, and so on. And the development and harmonisation of GMP guides and guidance documents, which I'll mention later. I think one of the big benefits for agencies joining PICS is the networking. Once you get to these seminars and meetings, you network, you share information, you ask for information, you ask for assistance. It's just so valuable. This is a typical PICS committee meeting. It meets twice a year. This one was in Geneva some years ago now, but it's quite a big meeting, a lot of people attending. You can imagine with 54 member countries, there's obviously more than 50 people in this room. The benefits of PICS membership. For regulators, the membership really forces the agency to make improvements. So it's a discipline. They have to take steps to make themselves equivalent to PICS requirements. So I'm going to discuss the PICS requirements shortly. They have to have a quality system in place that's consistent with the PICS quality system requirements. So it's a strong incentive to bring themselves up to a certain level equivalent to PICS. There are cost savings for the industry, for the regulators, because they can use their resources more effectively. They can, instead of going overseas to do inspections, they can ask that particular agency in that particular country to provide the inspection report of that particular manufacturer. There's a lot of training opportunities, seminars, joint inspections, coached inspections, the PICS Training Academy. This is a huge benefit to join PICS. They'll be using internationally harmonised GMP inspections. They'll be maintaining a consistently high standard of inspections, and they have to do this because once an agency becomes a member of PICS, they are reassessed to make sure that they maintain that high standard. They're involved in the development of international GMPs. There's a lot of sharing of information and experiences. And I've already mentioned this, the networking is just so valuable, and the personal contacts. The benefits for industry. One of the big benefits is reduced duplication of inspections, especially since the introduction of the PICS Inspection Reliance Initiative. In other words, an agency will not be duplicating an inspection if they know another agency has been to your company. It could be that TGA Australia has found out that MHRA UK has been to a Pakistan manufacturer. TGA will rely on that particular inspection. The same, once DRAP becomes a member, TGA will be relying on DRAP's inspection and will be requesting inspection reports. But I think the biggest benefit for industry is export facilitation. Once DRAP becomes a member, you'll find that your exports will increase quite substantially. And this not just to PICS member countries, but also to non-PICS member countries. My next slide will actually have an example of what happened in Australia when we became a member of PICS. There'll be GMP control for imported medicines. In other words, there'll be a level playing field for your industry, which is very important. You'll be more competitive internationally. You'll have enhanced market access. There'll be an increase in the reputation of your local industry. There'll be transparent inspection standards. You'll know exactly what standard you have to comply with. And there'll be more consistency in the way GMP inspections are carried out. And of course, reliable quality of medicines will be available both locally and internationally where they are exported. This is a graph which shows the increase in exports from Australia once we became a member of PICS. Of course, this is a long time ago. Australia, TGA, joined PICS in 1995, but there was a significant increase in exports. I'm going to talk now about the PICS accession procedure. This is what DRAP has had to go through. And they have to refer to these very important documents. There's a document describing the PICS scheme itself. There are guidelines on the accession procedure. There's a questionnaire they have to fill in when they make their application. They have to introduce a quality system which is consistent with this document, recommendations on quality system requirements for pharmaceutical inspectorates. They have to fill in a PICS audit checklist, which is a very detailed checklist containing 78 indicators. And this is exactly what I'm using. I used last week and will continue using this week when I'm talking with the DRAP inspectors. And there's also an interpretation guide on this particular checklist. This is a screenshot from the PICS website. And what I've got circled there in red at the top is where you can access these accession documents if you're interested. And by the way, the photos there, the lady on the right is Anne Hayes. She was the previous chair of PICS. She's from Ireland. And on the left, Mr. Boone. He was a chair prior to Anne Hayes, and he's from HSA Singapore. So the pathways towards PICS membership, I think it's important you as industry be aware of this process because it's quite a complex process. But once DRAP achieves membership, as I said before, lots of benefits for them and for you. So the pre-accession, and DRAP has been through this process. There is a 2-year time frame. They have to submit their questionnaire and audit checklist, which they complete themselves. It's like a self-assessment. They don't have to provide supporting documentation or evidence at this particular stage, only references to those documents. There's no registration fee, but they must pay an 80% of the annual membership fee per year. They get access to PICS committee meetings, seminars, training events, so that's a big benefit during this early stage of the application. The gap analysis is done by the applicant itself, so DRAP did its own gap analysis, but it's monitored by what they call a PICS rapporteur. And they had a rapporteur who did that, and that rapporteur prepared a lengthy report containing all the gaps and all the weaknesses. And the rapporteur then determines if the agency is ready to apply or not. And at this stage, DRAP was not ready to apply. They had to make some improvements, which they're doing right now with my help. The next step is to make a full application. So it's a PICS accession, they call it. And there's a 6-year time frame for them to do that, to complete the application. So they have to submit a complete application with questionnaire and audit checklist filled in English. They have to provide supporting documentary evidence of compliance. They have to pay a registration fee and 80% of the annual membership fee. As before, they get access to committee meetings, seminars, training events. And at this stage, the PICS conducts a desktop audit. And if things look reasonably okay, they then arrange an on-site audit. So these are the various steps towards membership. The agency shows an interest. The agency then obtains all the necessary documents to start upgrading their procedures. The agency makes a formal application by email, and the PICS secretary responds with information about questionnaire, checklists, fees, etc. The agency completes the questionnaire and supporting documents plus the fee, and the verification of the application is given by the PICS Secretariat, and that's when the 6-year clock starts ticking. At this 6 years, if you don't achieve membership within the 6-year period, you really have to go back to stage one. And that's happened to several agencies over the years. Taiwan went through that process. They had to reapply because they exceeded 6 years. Philippines were the same. They had to reapply because they exceeded. This 6-year clock, there is what they call a stop clock. You can stop the clock if, for instance, there's a major change within the agency and they want to pause their application. The committee then appoints a rapporteur and a co-rapporteur to evaluate all this documentation that has been sent, and an initial desk assessment is done, and an initial audit report is prepared and submitted to the PICS committee. The PICS audit team undertakes an on-site visit, usually about 1 week. Sometimes it's longer, sometimes it's 2 weeks, and they review various documentation, they observe some inspections, they visit the government testing laboratories, they finalise the review of systems and procedures, and they give feedback at the end of the visit. Corrective action must be provided by the agency. The final report is prepared and it's sent to the PICS committee, and the PICS committee then has to make a decision. They either agree to membership or they recommend a follow-up visit. To do this assessment, the PICS assessment team used what's called a PICS audit checklist, which contains 78 indicators and covering these 11 particular elements. This is a screenshot of the first page of the checklist. So each one of these elements has to be assessed individually, and I'm actually doing that right now with DRAP in Islamabad. Some information, and this is really important for the industry to understand, that when the PICS assessment team comes here to Pakistan, they'll be assessing the performance and competence of the inspectors. They will not be assessing and inspecting the manufacturers that is being assessed. So when DRAP does an inspection which is observed by PICS assessors, the PICS will not be inspecting you as manufacturers. They'll be inspecting the inspectors. Very important to understand. In theory, an agency can become a member within 18 months, but generally it takes applicants about 3 years to become a member. This is mainly due to the fact that the PICS committee only meets twice a year. The maximum time is 6 years, and as I mentioned before, there is a 12-month stop clock allowed. Typical schedule, day one could be the PICS team is at the agency. They go through steps like welcome, inspectorate presentation, they look at legislation, quality system, inspection procedures, all the elements of the checklist I mentioned previously. Days 2, 3 and 4, they would split up and observe three typical GMP inspections. An inspection of a sterile manufacturer, an inspection of a non-sterile manufacturer, and an inspection of herbal or some other category of manufacturer. And then they go to the government testing laboratories to do an inspection, an assessment there. these observed inspections, it's up to DRAP to select the manufacturers themselves. PICS did not select them. And I always tell the agencies, make sure you select a company that's got a few problems so that they can so the inspectors can demonstrate they can detect deficiencies. It's no good selecting a manufacturer who's got such good GMP that there's no problems to detect. And it could be that the observed inspections may be longer than 3 days. It probably will be for Pakistan because your inspection time is 5 days. So the PICS team will probably be here in Pakistan for at least 10 days, I would say. On the last day, the team would come back to the agency, they continue with their review of system and procedures, and then give an overview of their observations and what corrective actions are needed. These are the experiences of some countries to join PICS. It took Australia 5 years to join PICS, but they only had, the PICS team only had one visit. The main reason for that was that in Australia we have 6 state governments, and at that stage, way back in the 1960s, each of these state governments had their own GMP inspectorates. So Australia had to create a central GMP inspectorate, a national GMP inspectorate in Canberra, just one inspectorate for the whole Australia. And to do that, it meant legislation had to be changed, the Therapeutic Goods Act. And as you probably know, changing an Act of Parliament takes a lot of time. So that's the reason for 5 years. And I'd have to say that India and China are in a very similar situation. They have all these different inspectorates, different provinces, different states, and unless they can somehow create a central national inspectorate, it's going to be very difficult for those countries to get PICS membership. Singapore also took 3 years, but they had 2 visits. The main problem there was that they were not using the PICS GMP guide, so they had to start that, and they also had to have more extensive training of their inspectors. The same for Malaysia. But the US FDA is very interesting. It took them 5.5 years to join. They nearly exceeded the 6-year deadline. They were just on the edge. The main problem there was that in America, they had the same problem. They had different inspectorates in different states of America with different approaches, different quality systems. So the US FDA had to introduce one single quality system for all America. They had to have more training of inspectors. But one of the weaknesses, a big weakness in America at that time, was that the US FDA were not inspecting and regulating export-only manufacturers, which is a big, big weakness. And there are, as you can see on the screen, there are other problems as well. This is a photograph of the PICS assessment team that looked at the US FDA. On the left-hand side is Dr. Ravithi from Greece. She's from the Greek agency. Dr. Gowes from the South African agency. Paul Hargraves from MHRA UK. Chad Chetty from Health Canada. And Jacques Marinos from the French agency. It took that team 2 visits, with each visit lasting about, I think it was 2.5 to 3 weeks. It was quite a big job to do that assessment. And that was back in 2009. So the key expectations for PICS membership, I've got on the next few slides. One of the most important is to have effective legislation. In other words, legal powers to enter premises, conduct inspections, seize documents, take samples, etc. Also, legal powers to issue manufacturing authorizations, in other words, manufacturing licenses. only after a manufacturer demonstrates compliance with GMP requirements. Legal powers to suspend, revoke and amend manufacturing licenses, and legal powers to control export-only manufacturers. Another expectation is that the inspection resources, they must be competent and must be sufficient. And so far from what I have seen, the inspectors, the inspection team I have observed, my opinion is that they are competent. But one of the problems you have here in Pakistan is not enough numbers of inspectors. So that's a weakness that has to be addressed. They need to be properly trained and, according to a training schedule, and as I said, there must be sufficient numbers to meet the prescribed inspection program and frequency. And that's something that PICS will check on. They'll actually make a calculation. How many manufacturers are there that have to be inspected? How many inspectors are there to do that work? Using a risk-based approach to inspections, can the inspectorate achieve their target over a certain time? Another expectation is that the inspectorate must have a fully operational quality system in place. It can be modelled on 9001, but it must include all the elements of this PICS recommendation on quality system requirements for pharmaceutical inspectorates. It does not necessarily need to be certified, but a lot of inspectorates do have their quality system certified to 9001 or other ISO standards, because it creates a discipline to at least get the quality system operating and underway and having a good system in place. When I was at TGA, I actually got the inspectorate got them certified to 9001. Then after 2 years, we dropped the certification because it was expensive and for other reasons, and we just maintained compliance with this PICS quality system requirement document. The quality system must include a code of ethics or a code of conduct in order to help prevent conflict of interest. It must have a quality manager appointed to maintain the quality system. This can be a part-time position. It's very common for a GMP inspector to also be the quality manager, and that person maybe have 50% of his or her time doing inspections and 50% doing managing the quality system. It must use a risk management approach for inspection scheduling, which I'll discuss now. This is TGA's model for doing risk-based inspections. It's a scheduling approach where companies are divided according to risk category. So in TGA, they use the risk categories of high, medium, low, and low. So a high-risk manufacturer would be somebody making sterile medicines, biologicals, penicillins, and so on. And then the other category is the company rating. TGA rates companies into A1, A2, A3, and unacceptable. An A1 company would be the highest rating, very good compliance. An A3 rating would be just very basic GMP compliance, and unacceptable is obviously unacceptable. And I just to let you know that DRAP is also in the process of introducing something similar, not identical to this. And so far, I think they're going on the right track to introducing a risk-based approach to inspections. One of the important points to remember about this risk-based approach is that if you operate to very good GMP compliance, you get rewarded with less GMP inspections according to this approach. It's a huge benefit for your industry. You can see these re-inspection frequencies on the screen. they vary quite a lot, and you will get rewards if you operate a good GMP facility. Another expectation is that the GMP requirements must be equivalent to PRCS. The most common approach is to simply adopt the PRCS GMP guide. Some agencies have decided against that. I think there's a couple of agencies that wished to retain their own GMP. US FDA is one, and Japan is another. But they had to do a very detailed gap analysis to demonstrate that there was equivalence between their GMP and the PRCS GMP. But the most common approach is to simply adopt the PRCS GMP guide. Some additional news, there are various working groups within PRCS, and I think these working groups indicate perhaps the future direction that PRCS is going down. There is an EMEA PRCS joint drafting group to revise Annex 1, which is the sterile GMPs. And I'll have more to say about it in my next presentation, because there is a conference, an ISBE conference happening in Singapore in a few weeks where this topic will be discussed. They have a steering committee on the PRCS Inspectors Training Academy. This training is very valuable for inspectors. They have GCP, GVP working groups, controlled cross-contamination and share facilities, a data integrity working group, advanced therapy medicinal product working group, strategic development, and they're also strengthening cooperation with ICMRA. ICMRA is the International Coalition of Medicines Regulatory Authorities. It's the heads of agencies of regulatory authorities all around the world, which has a very strong link with PRCS. And ICMRA and PRCS have created this document called GMP Inspection Reliance Initiative, which is a very important document. Some useful guidance documents which are published by PRCS, and all these documents are available free of charge on the PRCS website. I won't read through these, but if any of you are interested in obtaining these, you can download them quite easily. There are some very useful aid memoirs which are generally written for GMP inspectors to help them with their inspections. And once again, these are available on the PRCS website. I use these myself when I do inspections. They can be quite useful in jogging your memory about different areas to inspect and different questions to ask. These are some recent PRCS documents that have been issued. You can see here cross-contamination, risk assessment, excipient, exposure limits. And these first three really provide supplementary information on some new clauses in the PRCS GMP guide. Because these are rather difficult topics, and PRCS felt that there needed to be some additional information provided on these topics. PRCS has some guidance on how to classify GMP deficiencies, some guidance on GDP for active substances, and this guidance on GMP inspection reliance. The Inspection Reliance Initiative, it's covered in that document. It was published in 2018. It's really a great initiative for reducing duplicate, same scope inspections. It involves an inspectorate relying on the outcome of an inspection by another PRCS member inspectorate rather than duplicating the same inspection. It simply consists of a desktop inspection by requesting key documents from the inspectorate that did the inspection. For instance, they'd ask for the inspection report, the GMP certificate, PQR, quality manual, and so on. And then they'd make a decision based on that desktop inspection. Normally they would accept the information received. Many training opportunities for GMP inspectors. And these training opportunities are currently open to DRAP GMP inspectors. They have annual training seminars, annual basic seminar for new inspectors. It's very basic inspection training, expert circles, a joint visits program, PLCS industry workshops, and the Inspectors Training Academy. So these are some of the recent training seminars held by PLCS. And you can see they cover a wide range of different topics, and they're held in different countries each time. And of course the ones in 2020 and 2021, they were virtual seminars using either Zoom or Teams, I can't remember. And this year's seminar will be held in Dublin in Ireland. It will include both the 50th anniversary symposium and a seminar on how to inspect pharmaceutical quality system. Typically at these seminars you get about 130, 150 inspectors attending from 45 different countries. Normally there's no industry participation, it's simply inspectors only, except where an expert from industry may be invited to give a technical presentation. This is a photograph of, it's rather an old photograph, 1996, during a PICS seminar in Sydney, Australia. It was a seminar on computer systems. And if you look at the size of the computer, it tells you how far we have come over all these years. It's a huge, bulky computer we were using back in 1996. But this photograph is of Dr. Kustantina from Indonesia on the left and Dr. Ali from Turkey on the right. At that stage, Turkey and Indonesia were not members of PICS. So I use this photo to say that even though you're not a member of PICS, you can still participate in PICS training seminars. They also hold expert circle groups. These are rather technical groups, but it's covering topics like APIs, computer systems, GDP, blood and tissue, quality risk management, and good clinical and pharmacovigilance practice. The aim of these expert circles is to develop draft guidance documents on these particular topics, and also to provide training in these specialist fields. If you're interested in receiving a newsletter from PICS, you can do so. It's a newsletter something like this by simply filling in this form which is on the PICS website. So that's all. Would you like me to take questions now or leave it till the second presentation? Okay, I'm happy to take questions if you have any at this stage.
Okay, Mike, you have to raise your hand, and now one by one, and just ask a question, please. Just ask question, so that we can have more participants to ask questions. Okay, thank you very much.
Bob, in your slide, we show the reduction of the audit and inspection or the duplication of the audit. So how to reduce the duplication of the audit by the application of PCIS?
I don't quite understand the question.
Yes, the question is how to reduce the duplication of the inspection. In your slides, you present that by the implementation of PICS, we reduce or duplication of the inspections.
So you're asking how does...
Yes. Duplication of the inspection.
The frequency.
Bob, you mentioned that one of the benefits would be that there would be a reduction, in duplication of inspections.
Oh, okay.
So
okay,
he's asking, how that would happen.
Yeah. So it's really because of this inspection reliance initiative where many PICS member authorities are relying on the inspections carried out by other members. So if you're finding that TGA is coming here a lot, then all the other PICS members can rely on that particular inspection. So you won't have a duplication of inspections. Some companies around the world are getting inspected by many different agencies covering the same scope. And this is a big complaint for industry. And this is the reason for introducing this inspection reliance initiative. I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
In Pakistan, previously the regulatory, which we used to call it Ministry of Health, have allowed manufacturer to manufacture cephalosporin in same plant, but dedicated, not segregated, but dedicated. What will happen when PICS inspection will come? That will they allow, or they have to just shut it down?
That's a topic that I need to discuss with DRAP next week. It's a very sensitive topic, and there will have to be changes.
You mean we have to shut down these cephalosporin, which are previously allowed by DRAP, and DRAP is also accepting that now even.
I didn't understand what you're saying.
We have manufacturing facility of cephalosporin in same plant. Okay? Previously it is allowed, and now also it is allowed. But what will happen when PICS will come? We need to shut it down?
Well, you need to, PICS will expect to see separate facilities for penicillins, cephalosporins, yeah. Yeah. With their own air supply. I know.
Basically what you are saying previously, which was potent medicine being manufactured in the same facility, now they have to have a dedicated and segregated facility as a definitive rule.
Just for penicillins, cephalosporins, yeah.
And hormones.
Well, hormones are a little bit different. There has to be very careful separation. There is a possibility of making hormones in the same facility, but hang on, we'll wait for a microphone.
I think it is clear in the law that they have the separate facilities for potent drugs, or for penicillin, or for cephalosporins. It is available in Drug Act of 1976, also the same in DRAP Act. We have legal provisions that there should be separate facilities for potent drugs and also for penicillins and cephalosporins. So this is the rules, this is the law. So that will continue. Otherwise, if you want any changes, then you have to change the rule.
Yep.
Thank you.
Bob, thank you very much. It was so meaningful and useful for us, and USP and the organizing committee. Thank you very much for organizing this fantastic event. As I could understand from your presentation that for the accession program, there are two parts. Part one, which will be 2 years from the starting point, and the part two will be another 6 years with 12 months of stopping the clock as well. I'm sure that you have been through the DRAP system or whatever Pakistan authorities has so far, and you may have a basic assessment as well. What do you think that how closer we are? I can understand that typically if it took 5 years for Australia, and if Pakistan can do it in 6 years, that will be a marvelous achievement. But other than that, I see that it may take another 10 years or so. So is there any formula that we can speed up the whole process? Otherwise, it will be another 10 years. Thank you very much.
In my opinion, DRAP is well advanced with their preparation. I think they'll achieve it much faster than some of the countries you saw on the screen. I mean, they have some corrective actions they have to do. This will take time. I would say maybe 3 years from when they make their application, maybe even shorter. I was very pleased with what I saw last week, and I'm still continuing to go through what they're doing and what they propose to do. But I think the industry must be on side. They must be supporting PICS, they must be supporting DRAP to adopt the PICS GMP guide. That's very important. Unless DRAP gets that support, I don't think it's worth putting an application. It's my opinion.
I have a question. In your slides, you showed that PICS conducts training sessions for the inspectors that are working with the authority. My question is, can individuals working in the industry also participate in those training seminars?
I didn't understand the question, so maybe could somebody interpret for me?
I'm asking that individuals working in the industry participate in those seminars that PICS conducts for federal inspectors.
Could you give me your interpretation?
Yeah, you mentioned that PICS conducts training seminars.
Yeah.
She's just wondering whether the industry can also participate in those training seminars.
Unfortunately, no. The training seminars are just for the inspectors. And they're tailored for inspectors only, how to inspect, what to look for, where to go, and so on. If you want training as an industry, you really have to arrange your own trainers, and we've got a very good person here in the audience, Mr. Sultan Ghani, who does a lot of this training. I can even suggest trainers from Australia and Singapore. I'm working with other agencies all around the world, and some of these trainers from other countries are doing this training online very effectively. So it's really up to the industry to arrange their own training program.
Thank you, Mr. Robert. You see, the inspection is a very wide term. It's not confined to one particular area or one particular section. See, what we have to see that how we can materialize this inspection to a practical level, where we can achieve the target and where we can really obtain what we really needed. You see, you have just shown in your slide one capsule. So if we capture this sample from one place and then taken away to another place, how can you inspect it and how can you distinguish it? Thank you.
Could you also give me your, thank you.
So his concern is that when samples are taken from the factory or plant or facility and the way they're transported to the drug testing laboratory, how do we maintain the integrity of that kind of chain to the drug testing laboratory, and what does PICS say about that?
I'm not aware of any procedure that PICS has on that, but it's something they do check on. They want to see that the integrity of the samples is protected from when the sample's taken. In other words, it goes into a container which is sealed with an integrity seal, properly labelled, and then transported in a way that maintains that integrity. If cold storage is required, that storage should be provided. And then when it reaches the testing authority, it's documented, unsealed in protected environment and so on. It's something that PICS will check on when they are assessing the government testing laboratories.
Sir, thank you. First of all, it's a very beneficial session for all of us. And at one point, I think we are all agree that GMP is same, whether it's US FDA, as told by our seniors. My question is this, that in one of the slides you have mentioned that for the 2-year session, we can give the references, and most of the industry, they have ISO standards in place. So how can we make this compatible with the PICS? I mean, you have mentioned that we can provide those references for the first phase of 2 years. So how can we make it, how can we demonstrate that those ISO standards that we are in place in our factory or industry is compatible with the PICS scheme?
You're talking about ISO compliance,
yes,
in the manufacturing sites. Okay. You'll have to appreciate that GMP, PICS GMP is quite different than ISO compliance. ISO is really focusing just on quality systems. PICS GMP goes a lot further with many other aspects like cross-contamination and testing and so on. So while it's very useful for a manufacturer to have ISO certification, they must look beyond that and introduce compliance with the PICS GMP guide, which goes a lot deeper and wider.
Hello. My question is, if we have an audit and we got some CAPA, so what will be the maximum timeline allowed for the company to close that CAPA? And secondly, if we submit the CAPA, so it's mandatory that the PICS authority will visit again to review the CAPA, or based on the documentation?
I'm going to be covering that in my next presentation, but I can answer you very briefly by saying it depends. It depends on what the deficiency is, how long it's going to take you to correct it. The inspectors may give you quite a long time. If it's going to be a major change to your factory, for instance, it's very sensible for them to give you a long period of time to make that correction. Other deficiencies, they may judge it's only going to take you a month or 2 months to correct it, and they'll indicate that.
Okay, I think we've had a few questions. Let's take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back for the other presentation and another round of Q&A. Thank you, everyone. Tea is also outside. I believe it's running tea. Thank you. Yeah, so you can have another cup. Load up on caffeine.
Tea would be good. Yeah.
Why don't you sit and I'll get
I'll sit.
Okay, welcome back everyone. I'd request you all to settle in so we can start the next session. This is the last presentation for today, and we'll have another round of Q&A after this. We'll give it another minute or so. I'll invite Mr. Robert to please join us here again. This will move the slides over there. Unfortunately, it's not synced.
Thank you. Before I start the presentation, I'd like to give you some information about a conference that's happening in Singapore. I've been in communication with ISBE Singapore about their conference coming up in a few weeks, and they've very kindly offered to give the DRAP inspectors complimentary or free registration to attend this conference, and also to the entire pharmaceutical industry in Pakistan, free registration to attend this conference, which is a very generous offer. And this conference, as you can see on the screen, I have to put my glasses on. It's being held in the middle of August, 17th to 19th of August, at now I'm having trouble with the screen again. Oh, it's come up. Okay. Maybe which that one. Okay. You can see it's the conference is covering quite an interesting range of topics, or tracks as they call it. So I think the inspectors and the industry would be very interested in attending this. And this is what's happening. On the 17th of August, it'll be all online. 18th and 19th, it'll be online and live streamed. And we have some very influential regulatory speakers at this conference. Paul Gustafsson, who's from Health Canada, he's the current chairman of PICS. Joey Gowles, head of GMP WHO. Somebody from TGA, the head of GMP. Somebody from HSA Singapore, very senior. Somebody from Thai FDA, and somebody from the Malaysian Regulatory Authority. I'm actually moderating and chairing 2 panel discussions involving these regulators, and that's in the compliance, the regulatory compliance track for this particular conference. And this next slide really shows how to go about getting this online, this free registration. I understand that DRAP has put this on their website, so you'll get more information about this this offer by ISB Singapore on their website. So my next presentation is covering the PICS inspection procedures. And in this presentation, I'm going to give you an overview of the typical approach to a PICS inspection, really using the TGA's model for doing this, but mentioning the ways other inspectorates do it as well. I'll also discuss some of the common GMP deficiencies found by PICS inspectorates. This is a document called the PICS Procedure for Teams Inspections, and this is what is really used as the basis for doing PICS inspections. So before an inspection takes place, the need for the inspection is determined. For a new site, this is usually suited to suit the manufacturer. For a re-inspection of a previously inspected site, they use a risk-based scheduling approach to determine the need for when the inspection should take place. And the inspection frequency is normally based on a number of different risk factors, and this could include the results of the previous inspection, any recalls, complaints, adverse events, any testing failures, significant changes. It could be the company's got a new building, a new facility, new equipment, new products, and also it could be they've received feedback from other regulators. And usually a computerized system is used to do this risk-based scheduling with all these factors fed into the computer model. Now, I've already shown you this model. As you can see, different risk categories, different risk ratings, and as I said before, you get rewarded if you have good GMP compliance with less GMP inspections. So before the inspection, the lead inspector is assigned. An inspection team is selected. This could include inspectors qualified for a specific product category. It could include technical specialists such as microbiologists and HPLC experts. It could include drug assessors, and it might include trainee inspectors as well. The actual duration of the inspection is determined really based on the previous inspector's recommendation, the level of compliance at the last inspection, and the various risk factors that I mentioned in the previous slide. The manufacturer is notified of the date, the number of days, and the names of the inspectors. Usually this is done by email or telephone. Usually one week's notice is given for local manufacturers, and up to 2 months' notice is given for overseas manufacturers. In Australia and many other PICS authorities, there are a few unannounced inspections carried out. I would say about 1/4 of all inspections in Australia are unannounced. And this is really, because of this, they do this because of maybe poor GMP compliance in the past, or where the true extent of GMP compliance cannot be assessed otherwise. And it's very, well, I say here it's common, but it's not so common. It's about 1/4 of manufacturers, but it's usually very common for overseas manufacturers. Before the inspection, and this is for overseas manufacturers, the manufacturer is notified by email and requested to arrange hotel accommodation, guidance on travel, hotels, transportation, translation, and so on. And various documents are requested, such as site master file, validation master plan, and so on. The inspection team will meet and discuss the inspection approach, and they'll review various documents such as site master file, product registration data, complaints, recalls, adverse events, the last inspection report, and usually copies of these documents are made to take on the inspection. The lead inspector will then prepare an inspection agenda, and this is usually risk-based to cover all critical areas. And usually the manufacturer is sent this agenda before the inspection. The inspection team will then travel to reach the facility, and for overseas inspections, normally 2 to 3 companies in the one country are inspected on the same trip. This is a fairly typical inspection agenda for a 4-day inspection. I won't go through this in detail, just to show you the general format. And your inspectors in DRAP are using something very similar. For arranging travel and hotels, it's a bit of a delay in getting the slides to show. Okay, travel and hotels. For a TGA inspection, for overseas inspections, they travel business class, but for all local inspections, it's economy class by air or by car. The hotels may be booked by the inspectors, but it's common for TGA to request the manufacturer to book the hotel, because the manufacturer has good local knowledge. The inspectors will pay their own hotel bill, and they'll get reimbursed through a process of recovering inspection fees, which I'll discuss in a moment. For ground transport, it could be by train, but this may be booked by the inspector, but it's common, once again, for the inspector to ask the company to do that, and they will pay for their own transport. So these are the inspection fees and charges charged by TGA. TGA operates what's called a full cost recovery model, so they recover all the costs of the inspections carried out. There's an application fee, which is it's about equivalent to €500. It's non-refundable. There's an annual license charge in order to maintain a manufacturing license. It's equivalent to about €3,000 per year. There's an inspection fee. It depends on the number of days, the number of inspectors, but it's equivalent to about €40,000 per inspection if there are 2 inspectors over 4 days. And the invoice is sent to the Australian sponsor after the inspection to recover the costs. Now, TGA operates a full cost recovery model. A lot of other inspectorates and PICS, they operate what's called a partial cost recovery model. They don't recover all the costs. Probably what will happen with DRAP, they'll perhaps introduce initially a partial cost recovery model. For overseas manufacturers, also a full cost recovery model is used, and there's an inspection fee much higher than for local inspections, equivalent to €56,000 for an inspection of 4 days using 2 inspectors. And also the airfare cost is recovered, but it's normally shared amongst all the sponsors or manufacturers inspected on that particular trip. The cost of hotels, transport and meals, etc. is part of the inspection fee. And once again, the invoice is sent to the Australian sponsor after the inspection, and a reconciliation of hours and so on takes place. The inspection itself, once the team arrives, there is a greeting, an opening meeting with introductions. The meeting attendance record is completed. The scope, objective of the inspection is discussed, resources and facilities is discussed, and the company is invited to give a short presentation giving an overview of the quality system, staff, layout of factory, etc. The inspection usually starts with a review of key documents, and the inspection team may split up to inspect different parts of the facility. And a summary at the end of each day is usually offered to the manufacturer if they wish. This is a typical meeting attendance record used by TGA. The DRAP inspectors are using something very similar. Just wait for this to catch up. Okay. So there are 3 different inspection techniques that are usually used by PICS inspectorates. There's the trace forward technique, where you start with the raw materials and follow the production flow right through the process to the finished goods warehouse. There's the trace backwards technique, where you review the history of a particular batch of product, and you might start off with the product itself, then go through the different processes, and then back to the raw materials. And this technique is usually used to investigate the cause of a product defect or product recall or a product complaint. And then there's the random technique, where the inspector might start with such as the PQR, and that PQR might result in a complaint being documented, and the inspector would investigate that complaint, the complaints procedure. That complaint may result in a CAPA being generated. The CAPA system would then be investigated, and that CAPA investigated. The CAPA may have resulted in a change control. The change control may have resulted in some training that's needed by staff. So these steps are investigated in detail each time. And this is often used for pre-approval inspections. So the logistics. So meals, the inspectors will accept meals on site and lunches on site, but they will not accept dinners in the evening. Gifts, they may accept inexpensive gifts, but not expensive gifts. They're not allowed to accept it. And all gifts that are offered are required to be declared by the inspectors when they return to their office. Inspectors are not allowed to accept any entertainment, and they're not allowed to accept sightseeing. So all PICS inspectorates are required to have a code of ethics or a code of conduct. It's really part of the inspectorate's quality systems, and they must have rules in place covering impartiality and integrity to avoid real or potential conflicts of interest, either commercial or financial. Avoid undue and improper influence, such as bribes, gifts, and threats. And distinguish between the process of inspection and the issue of license to a manufacturer. And also distinguish between the inspection process and providing an advisory or consultancy advice. The inspector can be subject to disciplinary action if any of these rules are breached. So this is the PICS quality system requirement documents, which covers all these rules covering deontology, ethics, conflict, improper influence. The closing meeting, it's, the inspection team may meet with themselves just to discuss the entire inspection, prepare their own list of deficiencies and classify them, and discuss the overall findings in summary form. The closing meeting is held with the company. The company may select who they wish to attend. The meeting attendance record is completed. A verbal summary of all the deficiencies is given, normally as a draft list only at this stage, and discussion is encouraged. And then a timetable of future action is discussed, timing for the written list of deficiencies from the inspectorate, and timing for the company's response to this list of deficiencies. At TGA, they use what's called an inspection closeout record. It's really a deficiency report listing all the deficiencies. And the deficiencies are checked by an inspection manager who is independent of the inspection. And really this is to ensure that the way the deficiencies have been classified is consistent across the inspectorate. And the inspection closeout record is sent to the company within 3 weeks of the inspection. And the company is requested to respond with corrective actions. And the objective evidence of corrective actions could be things like photographs, revised SOPs, invoices showing the purchase of new equipment, and so on. So this is what this inspection closeout record looks like. It's really very similar to a CAPA form, and just waiting for it to catch up. So the company, deficiency number 1 is shown here in red, and the company is asked to complete the corrective actions here. And once the inspectors assess the adequacy of these corrective actions, the TGA will make some comments on the right-hand side, and they'll say whether the corrective actions is satisfactory or not. And this process goes on until all the deficiencies are properly assessed as being suitable, and then the inspection is formally closed out. This is an example of a TGA GMP certificate. There is a cost for the issue of the certificate, and this is in addition to a manufacturing license, which I don't have a copy of, but that's a somewhat similar format. So unacceptable GMP compliance, if one or more critical deficiencies are found, it usually attracts an unacceptable rating. An independent audit manager and audit governance committee is involved in confirming the unacceptable status. For a new manufacturer, if they're found to be unacceptable, the manufacturer is simply not licensed by TGA. For an overseas company, they're not approved by TGA. For an existing manufacturer, if it's a local manufacturer, the license could be amended, it could be suspended, could be revoked. There's various other actions they could take. It could be the company has sent what they call a show cause letter, show cause why your license should not be removed. And for overseas manufacturers, the approval status and the GMP certification is simply revoked. The company, of course, has the option to appeal against that particular decision. Some common GMP deficiencies, and the PICS have defined what the three categories of deficiencies. I'm not going to read this, but you're probably familiar with this yourself. That's the definition for a critical deficiency coming out of the PICS process for classifying deficiency. It's a recommendation document or a guidance document. Some examples of critical deficiencies: evidence of gross pest infestation or lack of sterilisation validation. This is the definition for a major deficiency, quite a long definition. I'm not going to read that. You can find this in the PICS document on classifying deficiencies. Some examples of major deficiencies: firstly, inadequate change control system and insufficient lighting in production areas or inspection areas. This is the definition for minor deficiencies. And some examples: it could be a person is making an alteration to a batch document but did not initial that change adequately. It could be the equipment is not calibrated by the due date, another example. And this is the document I referred to, the PICS guidance on classifying GMP deficiencies. You can actually download that from the PICS website. It can be very useful for companies to use these same definitions for their own internal audits. I think data integrity breaches is probably one of the most common problems in the industry all around the world at the moment. It's not new, it's been around for many years, but it's got more visibility in the technical press recently. Data integrity breaches may arise from accidental or inadvertent mistakes of data transcription. They call this fat finger or paper or electronic fat finger mistakes. Or it could be deliberate falsification, fraud, cover-up, with data entry or results with intent to deceive, which is very serious. It has resulted in many guidance documents being issued by many different agencies. MHRA, FDA, EMA, WHO, PICS, ISBE, PDA, all these organisations have issued guidance documents on this particular topic. But I think the PICS document, I've got here draft, but it's no longer a draft, it's finalised. The PICS document on good practice for data management and integrity in the GMP environment is probably the most valuable. It's been written for inspectors, but it's still very useful for the industry to use and know about. It's really a consolidation of all the other guidance documents with significant input from all the 54 PICS members. It's very useful for industry. It covers specific areas of integrity considerations for paper-based systems and computerized systems. And it contains a checklist of expectations and potential risks if these expectations are not met. And this is the document itself, which can be, I think we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves. I'm not sure what's happening. Okay. Is somebody else doing this? Can you go to the next one, please? Okay, so these are examples of data integrity breaches for computerized systems. The first one, it could be that audit trails are not available or not enabled to enable electronic data acquisitions. In other words, audit trails not enabled on computer systems. What's happening? It could be the okay, it could be, I can't see it on the screen now. Okay, got it. That's it. Yeah, next. Okay, it could be that the time date function of the computer system has not been disabled by the system administrator. It could be there are multiple users sharing the same username and password. Or it could be all users can log on as the administrator with privileges that include the ability to modify and delete data. For paper-based systems, some examples, there could be 2 versions of OOS being used with a second unofficial version showing more excursions than had been reported in the first version. It could be that stability failures are not reported. It could be that batch documents showed only 1 machine operator for a blister packing machine when in fact 2 operators were being used. It could be staff training records were fabricated. It could be incomplete entries of verifications on batch records. There could be handwritten alterations made to the mixing time shown on a batch record, but no indication of who actually made the alteration. So change control. Change control systems did not include all the items relevant for the quality of products. Another example, change control process was limited to document changes and did not include changes to equipment, process, facilities and systems. Some change controls only included small document changes, but did not include large plant changes. It's like counting the ants and missing the elephants, counting the small things and not thinking about the larger picture. Facilities and equipment. It could be the cleaning validation is not done. Cleaning procedures do not include sufficient details to ensure the cleaning method could be consistently applied. The records of cleaning were not always kept. Inappropriate materials of construction. And this is the example I've got here. You can see the photograph is a stainless steel mixer with some weld joints in that circle, and the weld joints, very poor welding, creating crevices which could cause microbial contamination and cross-contamination. Water treatment systems. Okay. Inappropriate materials of construction. It could be, in this photograph, you've got a company using plastic garden hose for their water treatment system, totally inadequate, which causes a huge potential of contamination occurring. There could be no validated flushing procedure after chemical sanitization. It could be the volumes flushed when taking QC samples were much more than production staff were required to flush for their work. And lastly, it could be no time limit by which samples of purified water must be tested. HVAC. The at-rest qualification of an HVAC system was undertaken with production machines switched off. They must be switched on for that at rest. The installed filters were not as per specification. The type of filters required in the HVAC system were not defined. Pressure gauges and temperature sensors associated with the HVAC system were not calibrated. HVAC pre-filters were washed and dried in an uncontrolled environment. In fact, I've seen this in China quite often. They clean their pre-filters in an outside environment where there's a huge potential for contamination to occur. And the last point there, the SOP for operating AHUs did not indicate the sequence of switching on and off the AHU units in order to prevent the reversal of pressure gradient and direction. Sampling. It could be that the exposure of starting materials and primary packaging materials to uncontrolled environment during the sampling. Annex 8 of the PICS GMP guide requires all containers of sampling of starting materials to be subject to identification testing. And this is covered in Clause 2 of Annex 8. Failure to set limits on the number of samples that can be blended for testing other than identification testing. Sampling utensils were not treated as product contact equipment. In other words, failure to use purified water or as the final washing rinse of sampling utensils, and washing sampling utensils in inappropriate environment, such as a multi-purpose laboratory sink. And cleaned utensils were not covered when carried outside the controlled environment. So these are just a few examples, or many, many more I could share with you, but it's just to give you an idea of what's happening at the moment around the world with GMP deficiencies. So I'll stop there and answer any questions you may have. I understand there's going to be a panel discussion now.
Yeah, I request Sultan Saab, Kaisar Waheed Saab to come on the stage for the panel discussion. Bob, you can sit there. Yeah.
जी क्वेश्चंस प्लीज. मैंने पहले अर्ज किया क्वेश्चन जरा ब्रीफ करें ताकि हम बहुत सारे लोगों को जवाब कर सकें. क्वेश्चन प्लीज.
Hello. My question is that if any PICS member country provided the GMP inspection to a manufacturer, is this acceptable to other PICS member country, or is there any restriction?
So just so I understand what you're asking whether if an inspection is done by TGA, for instance, which is a PIC member, is that accepted to Singapore, who is a PIC member? The answer is yes.
Sir, my question is, do we have any relaxation regarding the product registration if we have already registered our product in a PIC member country?
Could you repeat it?
Do we have any relaxation regarding the product registration in a PIC member country, even we have registration in another PIC member country?
The PIC is more limited towards the GMP compliance side and not the product registration side. Product registration doesn't matter, even if product is registered in US FDA, Health Canada will have to do it because it's their regulatory obligation.
But any relaxation regarding the registration procedure, do we have any advantage?
No, not on the product side.
Another question is, what is the criteria to choose the inspector for PICS inspection?
Criteria for selection of the inspector.
You mean on recruitment? Yeah. Okay. On recruitment, they must have qualifications such as, I think in your country it's a pharmacist, but in my country, Australia, it can be a pharmacist, it can be a chemist, as long as they've got some university degree in a technical area. As far as experience is concerned, it tends to vary across PICS member countries. In Australia, we would expect new recruits to have some industry experience as well as good qualifications. In other countries, it's not necessary to have industry experience, but it can be useful.
Well, Mr. Robert, you have just pointed out something about the HVAC system. You see, the filter which is being used normally get contaminated. And what are the solution for that particularly? And number two, what kind of filters required in HVAC system which is not going to be contaminated when it is in use? Thank you.
It's a difficult one to answer. Of course, you have to have properly qualified HVAC systems. You have to have HEPA filters which have been shown to have the right integrity. You have to be monitoring your system all the time. What to do about contaminated HVAC system? I'm afraid I can't give you the answer to that. It's something that's really up to the manufacturer to decide.
You know, with this, the system has to, initially when you install it, any system, whether HVAC or water or compressed air or anything, you have to first qualify it. So you have to do the qualification of the system. As long as the filters are concerned, the manufacturer of the filters provide you some guidance about the time you can use them, or you change them, or you monitor them. So those are the instructions that you have to follow, and exactly during inspection they see whether you have followed those instructions or not. I mean, there are cases, I know, that we asked the company when this last filter was changed, and they don't know. They don't have the document to provide the evidence when the filter was installed and when they were changed. So, I mean, those are the things as a good housekeeping and as a following up the SOPs are quite important. Just to add up and just to further clarify, one of the questions that has been asked about the separate facility, and Dr. Rashid has specified that these are the regulations. Actually, in most of the countries that I knew, there are no regulation in terms of these separate facility. Very few countries have specified it. It's mostly in their guidance document about, because this is nothing to do to have separate facility. You can say, I make 10 drugs and I have 10 different facility for each drug. I mean, that's totally stupid to think it about that. So the issue is the cross-contamination. The measures that you have taken it to avoid it, and that's what the flow of the material and flow of the people, why we are talking about that. It is because of this. So the major issue is the cross-contamination. I remember in the yellow gold sheets, remember those who have seen the gold sheets in early times? I'm not sure they are not coming anymore by FDA. In the gold sheet, this question was asked about the cephalosporin, not for penicillin, because the issue of penicillin is slightly different, because the type of the material, the penicillin, is that they always used to say it walks with you. Means if you enter in a facility of penicillin, it will be all over with you. The particle is so fine, they get stuck, and then you can spread it all over. So penicillins they didn't talk about, but in cephalosporin, FDA position is that you can have it at the same facility and in a dedicated area, as long as you demonstrate that there is no contamination of cephalosporin in the other product. That is the key. That is the basis. This is the principle. So I can see in Islamabad there are many facilities that have cephalosporin facilities still there. Although you make an interpretation of your DRAP regulation, and you are violating right there, if you look at. The word again used in the regulation is the potent. So when you ask an inspector, why you keep asking it narcotic not to be manufactured or should be in separate facility? Because they are not potent. Why you are saying it have a separate facility? There's no answer. Because we decided that it should be in a separate facility. So I think this is the wrong interpretations. That's why the trouble comes, you know. You ask it that you need, can I manufacture this? No, you require a separate facility for that. Well, why? Why we need it? If I can demonstrate that there is no cross-contamination, that's no problem. So I think always remember this issue. That's why you don't have to ask it, can I make in a separate facility for this? Why? You have to, if you are afraid of the making it, you know, in a campus, you can have different facilities. And there's a case study that was quoted by US FDA that initially there was a penicillin manufacturing in that campus. There was no problem. But after few years, there was a problem of contamination of penicillin in the other facility. How it happens? Well, through the wind or through that people moving from one area to the other area. Well, FDA said then every drug that you are manufacturing, you should demonstrate the absence of penicillin residue. So I think if we use some good science and logic, then this is how it works. That's the issue of the separate facility and the. Let's bury this issue. It's totally now. It's up to the DRAP. I try to convince DRAP many times. Use the logic. Don't just go on that. Because this is, no, you are making your own interpretation of the regulation wrongly. Either you accept it internationally, that is the best. If I cannot make the interpretation of my own regulation, I'll accept the international practices and just accept it and work on those ones. So I think that is the issue. In this inspection side, one of the most difficult thing is to classify your deficiencies. I'm sure Bob will agree with me. Health Canada was trying and hassled it, what is critical and what is major and what is minor, and many minor will become major and all that. So, in order to do that, this is based on still all the decision on the good science. Good science and the impact. And this is exactly when I was teaching DRAP in many of these courses, I was telling them in the registration of the drug, please think it before you hold the document and start to review. Consider what added value I can do it with this document. If you are not adding any value, don't ask the question to industry. It's no use. Because the whole system, the regulatory system is based on the adding the value to the safety and the efficacy of the drug. So that we should be clear about that. Thank you. कैसर साहब का भी सवाल है कि जो पुरानी फैसिलिटीज़ हो गई हैं जो पहले डिज़ाइन की गई थी उस वक्त इस बात की कंसिडरेशन नहीं रखी गई थी कि मैन मूवमेंट एंड मटेरियल मूवमेंट का जो कंसिडरेशन अब बार बार कहा जाता है, अब कहा इसलिए जाता है कि उससे अवॉइड हो सकती है क्रॉस कंटेमिनेशन को काफ़ी हद तक। अब अगर आप ऐसा करते हैं कि आपकी फैसिलिटी क्योंकि पुरानी है, उसको आपको डिफ़िकल्ट है टू डू इट के फ्लो ऑफ द मटेरियल और मैन को किसी तरह से इन लाइन विद जीएमपी करें, तो देयर आर अदर वेज टू डेमोन्स्ट्रेट इट। अब मिसाल के तौर पर जब अगर मैन मूव हो रहे हैं तो आप मटेरियल को मूव ना करें, आप अपने एसओपीज बनाएं इस तरह से, आप अपनी टाइमिंग रखें। जब कोई कॉरिडोर में नहीं है, जब आपका पीरियड आता है, आप शाम में और अपने मटेरियल को मूव करा दें वहाँ जहाँ आपको पहुँचाना है। You write your procedure, I'm pretty sure an inspector will agree with you. Because the objective was that the movement is creating the more chances of cross-contamination. So you are trying to prove it, that you have and this is what we call the risk-based. What is the risk-based? In most of the companies, when you take your warehouse is sitting somewhere, you take the material from warehouse, you go to the dispensing, you dispense it. Up to that area, you have a very controlled environment. Soon after, from the controlled environment, you took the material to uncontrolled environment, carry the material in the uncontrolled environment back to the controlled environment again in the production. Now, during that period of uncontrolled environment, if you can take extra precaution to demonstrate, then this is acceptable. To many of these inspectors, it will be acceptable. That's what the risk is. You tried, you determined the risk, what the risk was. Then you take one of the tools of the risk guidance document from ICHQ9, and then you actually reduce the risk and you demonstrate how the risk has been reduced. There is nothing absolute. You cannot do it. There is no absolute safety, there is no absolute efficacy, there is nothing. So you can demonstrate that. And there are the facilities still existed in Europe, and Bob will confirm that there are very old facilities. They have been improved. Definitely you can improve them, and you can change your procedures, and you can use the risk-benefit principles and can work it out easily. You don't have to say, I have to make a new facility, that's why then I'll get a PIC approval. PIC approval received first time in Pakistan was Gats Pharma. And Gats Pharma approved it in its old facility. Why? That they made changes, they follow the procedures, and they changed those procedures, and they did lot of risk assessment. So the game is risk assessment. You have to do risk assessment. And that's why when Bob was mentioning about FDA, and people say, oh, it took FDA 6 years to join the PIC. I mean, it took Canada about 2-3 years. I remember when we applied it for that, and then when the first audit of evaluation of the PIC was done in Canada, they told us, your sterile manufacturing is weak. That's the area of your. And we know that we do not have that type of expertise within our compliance. So we improved it, and we eventually got the members. In US, there were two problems. The problem was that some of the states also do some of these inspections, and there is one clause which is very common in North America, and that is a lot of the people, they don't know, that when the drugs is manufactured, the regulations is written, the drug you market in your own country. Remember that point. Means for export, you can, no control. Local authorities are not controlling for export. And that's one of the major issue also in Canada during the PIC evaluation and during the mutual recognition agreement with Europe. We have to change that regulation. The regulation was we have left export free. So at one time, if I want to manufacture in Canada for export, even inspector is not allowed to come in my facility. He cannot come. I'm manufacturing for export. I'm not manufacturing for Canada. So I mean, those are the reasons that took long period of time, and also the same situation that Bob have explained you, and I'm sure you must have catch it, that India may take long time. I think Bangladesh is little advanced because I'm aware of it through USP, PQM plus activity of Bangladesh. So that's what it is.
One more question. We are using mostly Chinese machinery in our manufacturing facility. Is there a particular requirement that machine be imported from any particular source or country?
I didn't hear you.
Yeah.
You were talking to me.
Yeah, the question is that the Chinese equipment are not in compliance with CFR 21. You are not
I can't. I don't know the answer to that, I'm afraid.
Sorry?
I don't know the answer.
Oh.
I'm sure it looks like to me, if FDA is going to come and do the inspection, possibly they will ask it about that. But if Chinese machinery is not CFR 21 compliant, the other regulatory authorities will ask questions, as long as you have demonstrated all the measures that has to be taken. That's my personal view. I don't know exactly how it happens, because there are Chinese equipments in GATS initially, and they didn't object it, the PIC.
यार आप लोगों को आप पे मैं सवाल कर रहा हूँ, आप लोग करें ना यार, ये माइक दे आप नदीम साहब को.
Taking the advantage of presence of Sultan Sahib and Bob, we all know that GMP is very critical in the entire system and the system itself. But what we have observed as a human being, that human behavior is key in everything what we do. I generally have observed, not only in the manufacturing facility, but even outside the facility, that behavior plays a very critical role. Both of you, Bob and Sultan Sahib, must have gone through hundreds of inspections, and you must have read thousands of reports as well. How do you see the significance of human behavior in the GMP culture, number one? And do you have any tips that how do we create a quality culture through behavior on the site? Thank you very much.
Very good question. Wow, मजा आया. स्वाद ही आ गया. आपसे सवाल किया ह्यूमन बिहेवियर.
I couldn't catch your questions, to be honest. Ji.
I need the attention of Bob and Sultan Sahab, both of you, that as we have observed that human behavior is very critical in whatever we do outside the manufacturing facility or inside the manufacturing facility. Despite having immaculate GMP system, human behavior poses threats to the GMP system entirely as well. You must have done hundreds of inspections, must have read thousands of reports as well. How do you see the significance of human behavior in the GMP culture? And what is your advice or any tips that you may have that how do we create a quality culture using human behavior on the manufacturing side? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Now I got it. I'm not the expert on the human behaviors, but anyway, we can see a lot of human behavior these days on television, so that is surprising to all of us. But I'll give you one example. And one example is the GSK Puerto Rico closed down. That's the classical example of human behavior. While US FDA was monitoring constantly for 3 years and advising the management of GSK that you have a major problem of your human behaviors of your staff. And there were a lot of incidents, you can say, that these packaging individuals are making these little mistakes, that in the white tablet bottle there is a red tablet. And one is good enough. That will make a recall of the whole batch. So if you read, and I'll suggest you to, many of you should read these reports. The reports is available, except they have taken out some of the proprietary information. But that report will indicate you how your labor side is. You know, I mean, it is easy to the management to say, I'll fire them, I'll take them out, and many of the companies in Pakistan, which I was little surprised to have third parties, companies to get the laborers, and, you know, when they don't need them, they ask them to go home and all that. So that's also, I think, is not a right approach, but anyway, they understand it, they don't want unions and all that. So, in consideration of that, that becomes an important aspect of the GMP, of the training of these temporary workers, your casuals and all that. How you have trained them? You put them right away to the machine or to the processes, without providing them the proper training. And then that their behaviors could be intentional or unintentional will be there. So I think it is quite important. That's a very important question, and it's a big challenge to industry in terms of considering the human behavior. I'll pass Bob. Bob possibly got that.
I agree with everything you say, Sultan. I think open communication with staff, regular quality circle meetings, regular discussions, proper training, and getting your staff to take a pride in what they're doing in their work day to day.
देखें जी, ह्यूमन बिहेवियर की साइंस में एक डेफिनेशन या एक फ्रेज इस्तेमाल की जाती है, अल्टरनेटिव पॉजिटिव बिहेवियर. हम हमेशा कंफ्यूज करते हैं एटीट्यूड को और बिहेवियर को. वी मस्ट अंडरस्टैंड कि जब कोई कॉर्पोरेट सेटअप में, वर्किंग सेटअप में हमने बंदों के बिहेवियर पॉजिटिव करने होते हैं, हमें उनके जो पर्सनल एटीट्यूड या एटीआईज हैं वो उनसे हमें कोई दिलचस्पी नहीं होनी चाहिए. तो इसलिए एपीबी इस्तेमाल किया जाता है, अल्टरनेटिव पॉजिटिव बिहेवियर. वो कैसे डेवलप करना है, वो जो मैनेजमेंट साइंस या बिहेवियरल साइंस के लोग हैं, वो अगर आपके यहाँ बहुत मेजर इश्यूज हैं तो आप वो बिहेवियरल साइंस के लोगों को इन्वॉल्व कर सकते हैं, जो आपको बताएंगे कि भाई आपके यहाँ क्रिटिकल बिहेवियरल इश्यूज क्या हैं और माइनर और मीडियम टाइप, तो वो आपको बताएंगे बिहेवियरल साइंस के लोग. एक कंपनी पाकिस्तान की बहुत बड़ी कंपनी ने इस चीज़ को अंडरस्टैंड किया और उन्होंने तकरीबन 3 साल तक ह्यूज इन्वेस्टमेंट के साथ अपने गार्ड जो दरवाजे पे खड़ा होता है, गार्ड और टॉप एग्जीक्यूटिव तक उनकी ट्रेनिंग, रिगरस ट्रेनिंग करवाई. यही इस पॉजिटिव की, उसको ग्रिड ट्रेनिंग कहते हैं, वो करवाई पूरे जहाँ जहाँ भी दुनिया में उनके ऑपरेशंस थे. सो इस इन्वेस्टमेंट करनी पड़ती है हमें ह्यूमन बिहेवियर पे, उनकी ट्रेनिंग्स पे. अगर कोई और क्वेश्चन है तो बताइए, वरना वी मूव टूवर्ड्स कंक्लूडिंग सेशन और कंक्लूडिंग रिमार्क्स वॉट एवर. तो अगर किसी ने और कोई सवाल करना है, और दूसरी बात है कि अभी लंच में हम सब अवेलेबल होंगे, तो वहाँ भी आप प्राइवेटली अगर कोई क्वेश्चन करना चाहते हैं, वी ऑल आर अवेलेबल. ठीक है. मैं अभी वो देने आप लोग गिफ्ट देने, तो वो कैसे सबके सामने दें, क्या करें?
Just from my side, being the part of the USP, which I find it quite interesting, although I'm not directly involved with the USP Pakistan activities, but a part of my responsibility, I try to help the USP Pakistan. I'm in the Far East side, and I'm doing all my work to the Far Eastern countries. I tried my best to help for many years when I moved in 2012 from Canada. And this trip, when I went back and my children asked me, what I'm doing it in Pakistan, I should be back now. And at that time they said, well, Dad wants to do anything, then let them do it, but I'm getting old now, so I think I should consider that. But I think, I feel, I wish that at least 5 to 10 companies of Pakistan go to international. When Bangladesh can go in that such a short period of time, what's wrong with us? So I think somebody has to do some soul searching of. I think we can just say DRAP is one of the reasons. No. I think it has to work. There are other reasons for that. And I think industry should also take this responsibility. Because you know why I got very hurt when industry took the position to get rid of the CTD. I really worked very hard to introduce the CTD in DRAP. And I think it was a format. It has nothing to do with your additional requirement. One should at least have some information of the product that you want to register. You at least have some information about your formulation and some stability. Sure, you could ask it for reduced requirement, that I can buy it. Not the requirement what CTD guidelines talks about the data. But I think I will ask industry that if they work hard, and some of them are doing hard, because I predicted that there should be 5 or 6 companies to get international recognition. Unfortunately, COVID created this problem, and I'm hoping that now we have 2 companies in Pakistan that received WHO pre-qualification. It's not important only WHO pre-qualification. We should get PIC approval, we should get MHRA approval, we should get FDA, Health Canada, and it's not at all a difficult task. I can assure you, you can get it, Health Canada, much easier. And Health Canada is, if you got the PIC, you can get Health Canada. PIC covers a lot of these compliance thing. So I think it is much better than TRAP is sincere and serious, and I hope they maintain and they don't behave differently with the industry. That is the fear you have, that the panel will come and do the inspection. But maybe think it for a minute, that possibly that they will at least identify you. Maybe they call it critical or wrong classified it, but at least they can identify the deficiencies and all that, particularly the new generation of the DRAP. So with that, I like to thank you. I suggested, Kaisar Saab, that USP is a real opportunity. PQM Plus is a real opportunity for us here to do a lot of training. We can do training for industry, not necessary that the PICS training is for industry. PIC is more focusing on the inspectors, and I'm sure that we can work it out some regular program with PPMA or Pharma Bureau. Thank you.
देखें जी, पाकिस्तान फार्मास्यूटिकल मैन्युफैक्चरर एसोसिएशन के आज जो चीफ एग्जीक्यूटिव्स हैं वो नहीं आए. उसकी इंटेंशन यही थी कि ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा हम प्रोफेशनल्स जो हैं, जो क्वालिटी से वाबस्ता हैं, जिन्होंने इंश्योर करनी है क्वालिटी, वो पार्टिसिपेट करें, ताकि जो इंश्योर ये जो ट्रेनिंग है ये उनको बेनिफिट पहुंचाए, रादर दैन मेरा या तौकीर या नादिर या और जो एग्जेक्टिव आए थे उनके लिए ज़रूरी नहीं थी ये. ठीक है, ये आप लोगों के लिए ज़रूरी है. हाँ, मेरी एक दो बातें हैं. आपने अगर अभी तक अपनी रजिस्ट्रेशन नहीं कराई तो अपना ईमेल एड्रेस हमें ज़रूर दें, ताकि हम आपको डिजिटल सर्टिफिकेशन आज की मीटिंग की भेज दें, आज की ट्रेनिंग की. दूसरी बात, हम चाहेंगे कि आप अपना फीडबैक हमें ज़रूर भेजें पीपीएमए को, ये ताकि हमारे इस तरह के सेशन करने, अगर आपने कोई इसमें देखा है कि कोई चीज़ कम थी, ज़्यादा थी, या और क्या इम्प्रूवमेंट हो सकती है, एरिया ऑफ इम्प्रूवमेंट हमेशा रहते हैं, तो मेरी रिक्वेस्ट है वो हमें बताएं. ये यूएसपी वालों के भी काम आएगी, हम इनको भी फॉरवर्ड कर देंगे, ताकि नेक्स्ट जब ये हमारे साथ ताउन करें तो हम इससे बेहतर आपके लिए कोई शो पेश कर सकें. मैं नादिर खान साहब और तौकीर भाई जो हमारे फॉर्मर चेयरमैन, उनसे रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा कि स्टेज पे आए. हम थोड़े से सोवीनियर्स पेश करना चाह रहे हैं अपने गेस्ट को. तौकीर हक साहब, नादिर भाई.
Thank you so much. Our precious time flies like an arrow, so we have already, concluded this session. So from the USP PKM side, we assure that such kind of, seminars and awareness session will continue, and it's of first kind that held in Karachi, but we are planning, as Sultan Sahab also briefed that, so not only the seminars, but also the training programs like we used to do in past before this COVID. So inshallah, we are planning for a series of, workshops for the pharmaceutical industry over the different topics that includes the GMP. So taking the opportunity, I want to thank you, Nadir Saab, Tawqeed Saab, of course, Kaisar Waheed Saab, and all the PBA senior leadership for all their support. And thank you so much for your active participation. And as Kaisar Saab already mentioned, please do share your feedback so we can improve the next session. Thank you again. Thank you so much.